Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our strategy structured discussion, wherein we want to propose that the strategy that an organization pursues determines its organizational structure. The corporate strategy or the competitive strategy or the functional strategy that an organization pursues has an effect on the structure of that organization. This is normally referred to as the strategy imperative, when most people tend to argue that the strategy that an organization has in order to achieve its goals and objectives will influence its strategy. The strategy imperative hinges on a number of assumptions. One such assumption that is realistic is that all organizations have got goals towards which they strive to achieve or reach their vision. So they have got goals towards which they drive their efforts to. And once they reach or attain these goals, then these organizations become it. Organizations also move towards these goals in a rational manner, meaning management sits down and plans about how to attain these goals. It's not something that managers go for in a haphazard manner. It's something that managers do sit down and think about, and they move deliberately towards the stated goals and objectives. There is also the assumption that organizations have a purpose of existence. They exist to transform or to change inputs into outputs. So organizations exist to produce products. They exist to produce services. And they do so by converting inputs, converting raw materials into those goods and services. Organizations also are assumed to exist in an environment which is given. They operate in a given environment. So the environment in which the organization operates is a given variable. It's not something that managers do think about a lot. It's something that they happen to know. And if you look at the assumptions, the four assumptions that we've talked about, perhaps this is the only assumption that is out of place, because it is not a ceteris paribus issue that we have to assume, because the environment in which organizations operate is not given, it's dynamic, it's changing, and you can't take it as a step in time. When we talk about the strategy, we're talking about the course of action, we're talking about the means, we're talking about how an organization wants to achieve this goal. So strategy defines the means by which an organization adopts a course of action in order to achieve stated goals. Definitions do differ, but we do find three characteristics defining a strategy. That strategy is a course of action, is a means that an organization uses in order to achieve long-term goals. We rarely craft strategies to achieve short-term objectives. Therefore, it is a course of action. It is a series of activities that management embarks on in order to realize these long-term goals. And to realize these long-term goals, management must allocate resources to these activities that are planned, to the means that has been set apart to realize set goals. That's what a strategy is all about. There are two views about a strategy. Some people look at a strategy as a product of a planning process wherein you carry out your SWOT analysis, and after your SWOT analysis you then decide how to take the opportunities in the environment or how to take the threats that are in the environment. And some managers will then go low-cost leadership strategies in order to exploit opportunities in an environment and also ward off stress in that same environment. The other view is that the environment is evolutionary. Strategy is not something that we think of. It is something that evolves over time. Therefore, it is a stream of significant decisions that do evolve over time from our series of activities that we do. So when we see a strategy, sometimes it is a strategy that would have emerged or evolved rather than thought out. And no one tends to own such a strategy because we just see the strategy. The history of the strategy points to the planning mode as the best way of coming up with strategy. But what we now know is that the evolutionary mode is gaining acceptance. People tend to now realize that most of the strategies that we find in companies are emergent strategies rather than strategies that emanate from classical planning, emanate from well thought planning and analysis of the environment in terms of the internal environment and the external environment. When we talk about strategy, we are talking about courses of action, means that are deployed by an organization at three levels. And to best understand these levels, one is to envisage a holding company structure, a structure wherein a company owns other companies. At a holding level, we've got the corporate level strategy. This is a general strategy that defines the domain of operation. Where should we have a presence and how should we compete at that general level? And if you were to take Delta, the corporate level defines the beverages market as the competitive domain or area where the company must have presence. And the top managers tend to come up with these corporate strategies, the growth strategies, the retrenchment strategies. At a lower level, then we've got the SBU level strategies, or what other people simply call it business level strategies. A business level strategy is a strategy that then comes up with how an organization wants to beat rivals in a given domain or in a given market or in a given industry. And lastly, we've got a functional strategy, a strategy that looks at how each and every function will contribute to the business level strategy. How will marketing contribute to the way we compete in the market? How will human resources contribute to the way we compete in the market and the way we want to achieve business excellence? So we are looking at different functions within an organization and asking each function as to how it will contribute to the attainment of competitiveness in an organization. When we discuss the strategy imperative in a short period of time to come, we will then look at the relationship between three variables. We will look at the internal environment that yields organizational capabilities, and we will also look at the macro environment. We will then say the internal environment and the external environment do influence the strategy that an organization uses to achieve a competitive edge. It is by analyzing the external environment and the internal environment. And out of that analysis, we then craft a strategy that helps an organization manage the threats that are in this environment, that helps an organization exploit the opportunities that are in the market environment. Therefore, a strategy is a result of a SWOT analysis. And once we have got a strategy, the strategy then determines the structure. So we want to look at that linear relationship to say we have the internal environment and the external environment. And if we analyze these two environments through a SWOT analysis, we then come to establish competitive strategy. And once we have established a competitive strategy, we then design a structure that aligns with the strategy. And if there is that alignment, then an organization will beat competitors. In the next presentation, I want us to look at researchers who have pushed this imperative, who has supported this imperative and said, yes, indeed, strategy determines structure. Thank you very much.